So this is a cabbage SABJI, and it's a little bit about the harmony of dissonant sound. Oh, it sounds very philosophical, doesn't it? But it's a way of thinking about masala, and these products are a really interesting way to introduce the idea that harmony doesn't have to be soft, it doesn't have to be pretty, and it doesn't have to be classically beautiful. So what we're playing with here is a trio of ingredients. Actually, let's say a quartet. Let's say a quintet. Escalate it. So mustard oil, cabbage, black mustard seed, a hot red ground chili, and garlic. Now, most of the time when we're talking about harmony, we're thinking about flavours that balance really beautifully and elegantly, and that sit within the frame of warmth and sweetness and familiarity, earthiness. So the more polite, I guess, aromatic textures. So with this SABJI, what we're doing is we're playing into the harmony of astringent taste. Now, astringent is a bit of a tricky descriptor when it comes to flavour. And I do find that it's probably one of the categories of masala that I work with that has the most questions around, like, what does it actually mean? So astringent is anything that's stripping. Stripping would be like a paint remover or nail polish remover. You know when you smell those things and it sort of sears the back of your nostril hairs? Obviously, you don't want to be eating paint remover or nail polish remover, but astringent spice performs that same stripping action. Now, the reason that astringent spice works as a necessary element in at least some masalas is that it provides access to different parts of the palate that aren't accessible otherwise. So the gullet, which is this space here, and then you're sort of behind the nasal cavity, sort of behind the bones of your nose and up into this space. Why we want to get into different parts of the palate, it's a couple of fold reasons. One is that every section of your palate will give you access to a different series of emotional, sensory body content. So the way that food works in terms of, allowing us access to certain elements of ourselves, which is really what we're doing with masala. We're seeking to replicate ourselves through food and also see ourselves in the spice that we put together. So the gullet here is about our deeper, darker, subconscious, emotive space. And then just from a functional perspective, it allows us to create denser, darker, shadowed flavour or more complex flavour with masala and give us more room for the experience. So as soon as you open this space in the throat, you've twofold increased the area that masala can occupy. And when it comes to complex, intense flavour, one of the ways to make it more digestible is to dissipate the intensity a little bit, and that's what opening this gullet space does. Now, the thing about creating harmony with astringent tastes is we're giving ourselves access to darker flavours, to more stripping flavours, to flavours that are deemed, or tastes that are deemed more arousing of darker character. And by using them in multiplicity, what we're doing is we're harmonising what otherwise appear to be dissonant flavours when they're paired with warmer aromatics, because the contrast is so much greater. You've got this contrast of warmth and beauty and ease, and then you have all of this sort of dissonance and darkness and shadow, and each one emphasises the other. But if we need to feel into these aspects of who we are, those sort of darker psychologies or more guttural tastes just to satisfy a different type of hunger, then one of the ways to do that and make it more digestible is to harmonise them together. So that's what we're going to do, which is a really long explanation. I didn't think it would take me that long to get there, but it did. Okay, so cabbage. I love, love, love cabbage for this kind of masala because it is intrinsically sort of sulfuric and dark, and it has a lot of hidden aromatic quality. Now, whenever I make this, I actually make it in quite small quantity, chiefly because cabbage doesn't reheat very well. It tends to get a little, firstly texturally, it doesn't steam to sort of a pleasing texture, but also because I'm pairing cabbage with quite dark astringent flavour, when I do, or if I do reheat that, those flavours run through again and it actually gets quite intense and low, and it can get a little bit unpleasant actually. So I really just make enough to eat whatever I want to eat at that time. So I think I'm going to do a quarter of a cabbage and just slice it really thinly. The nice thing about these sorts of SABJIs is that they're really quick. Like, because cabbage doesn't require any pre-cooking, particularly when it's sliced like this, because it has such a high moisture content and not a sort of prohibitive exoskeleton or exterior structure, or it's not like a potato or a cut of lamb shoulder that has to be broken down in any way. It's just cabbage. This is a pretty traditional vegetable across the regions of India. We ate it as kids. It's a hard vegetable to love when you're a kid, cabbage. Okay, so I'm going to do this in a frying pan. And I'm also going to make the frying pan larger than I actually need it to be, because I want the cabbage to touch the pan at all points. That way it'll cook faster and caramelize, you know, be a bit nicer. Okay, so what I'm going to do is show you as a cold pan lay what this looks like. I'm going to do, let's say 4 cloves of garlic, which is kind of a lot of garlic, but one of the nice things about garlic in this instance, when I know I'm going to use a lot of darker flavour, so mustard oil, red chilli, which is, you know, a classic ground hot red chilli, is quite shadowed. You'll see its colour is very brickish, brick red. It'll be quite smoky and aggressively hot. Black mustard seeds also are pretty moody, really, on the aromatic front. Okay, and so garlic has this just really lovely propensity to appear bright and acidic when backed in contrast to those darker astringent flavours. So it's, you know, like all spice, it's a chameleon. If you put it with warm aromatics, it'll appear more astringent and a little bit more difficult. But when you pair it with dark aromatics, it shows itself to be brighter and more fun and kinder. Okay. I mean, obviously you can see I'm not chopping it very well. It doesn't really matter. I guess you could mince it if you were so inclined. Okay, so to match our astringent, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put this in all at once, really, just for efficacy and because it's really about showing how we can harmonise dissonant flavour. Think of it like astringent harmony is kind of like a death metal band, but not as aggressive and more delicious. Like, you know, you've got all of this noise All right, so all of the garlic's going in. I'm going to use a harder salt. I'm flicking garlic everywhere. So I've got this lake salt from Lake Deborah in Western Australia, and it's actually very mineral and sort of quite dry. If you imagine a big dry salt lake in the desert in Western Australia and the sort of harshness of that, it translates through the salt. So a teaspoon, and just a third of a teaspoon of a sea salt as well. Black mustard seed's a bit of the star, so I'm going to do 2 teaspoons of black mustard seed, a half a teaspoon of a hot ground red chilli, and that's it. That's fairly aggressive, so I'm going to heat it over here. Move that. So when you temper, also just as a FYI for all the videos today, Trav is in them a little bit because of the way my kitchen runs. So you'll see he's back. Sorry, Trav. So one of the interesting things in a SABJI like this is because it's so like linear in terms of the aromatic profile I'm driving. Like it's a very straightforward, astringent, hot, dirty kind of flavour. What it actually does is it allows any sweetness in the cabbage to serve as contrast. So it actually will draw out sweetness from the cabbage that's recessed into that vegetable. If I added warm spice into it, suddenly the sweetness in the cabbage wouldn't show because the warm aromatics would be taking that position of contrast because they naturally have a more dominant sweetness. So like there's just, it's interesting, sometimes you want to fix a masala before you put the produce in, but it's always worth, you know, playing around a little bit to see. I just want to taste it, but it's on a bit high. Let's turn it off for a sec. Where's my tasty spoon? I think it's going to be fairly salty and full on and hot. Oh, yeah, it is salty and mustard oily. Oh, there it goes. There's the chili. Good though, yummy, like striking. And just what I was saying, it's aggressive, but it's, well, aggressive's a strong word. It's driving and shady, but it's definitely, there's definitely a harmony in there. It's really quite lovely in an aggressively astringent way. So cabbage is going to go in. Now you can see that there's quite a little bit of oil in there, and I do that with vegetables like this that take out some of the chunky bits. With vegetables like this that will really soak it up because it's yummy. I just want to take out the woody pieces, only because I don't want to have to cook it for very long. You know, just for filming efficacy. I'm going to turn the heat down just a fraction. So one of the things about choosing your vessel to cook in is that using this kind of vessel, what I'm doing is I'm allowing a softer heat. So the water or the moisture that's inside the cabbage is extracted and actually softens the cabbage down into that bed of fat and masala. If I use a kadai, which is that cast iron under here, which is this thing, because of the way it conducts heat and because of the way the cabbage disperses up the sides, the moisture actually evaporates really, really quickly. And what happens is I get char on the cabbage instead of softness. And for this dish, because there is so much driving flavour, I actually don't want that charry taste, because the char taste is another form of aggression. Instead, I want softness. I want it to kind of collapse into itself, and at the later stages of the cook, just a really a sort of a liquid caramelization, or a softer type of a caramelization that's brown and not that charry black. And that is going to provide the missing sweetness that's not there in the spices that have been used to construct the masala. Now, if you're in an Indian household, you could have this with puri and dal. If you are looking for another option, you could use this as a bed for seafood, or a bed for any sort of protein, to be honest, or tofu. It's delicious instead of a rice or a pasta. I'll try it again. Ouch. Oh, that's so good. It's hot. Sorry while I struggle with the red chilli. The red chilli is giving it a kick. It's not, it's interesting actually, it's not very inflammatory, but it just, like, it really catches in the gullet. So it is very much in this space that we were speaking about earlier. Because it's dispersed into this space, up in my top palate, I'm getting sweet, nutty, slight sulfuric kind of overtones. And then down here, it's all, astringent, slightly medicinal, but not in a bad way. And then the heat, the brick heat of the chili is also down in this part of my gullet. So it's really light while still being shadowed. That recessed sweetness of the cabbage is coming through. And one of the ways you could actually sort of sweeten it back would be to add a little bit of a squeeze of lime and some fresh curry leaf just to finish it if you wanted to, but I don't really want to. That's it. Cabbage sabzi with black mustard seed.